Gerald Nielsen, the lawyer who defends WIO, said in a letter to CBS News he couldn't talk about his fees and expenses, but that he was acting at the direction of his clients and that all of his firm's bills were reviewed by the clients and FEMA. And FEMA did respond to a report overnight saying it will pay every dime that policyholders are due, and they say they're going to establish a special oversight team to look over all of these billing and litigation matters. They're promising this will be fixed.
It's an unbelievable investigation, Jeff. And explain for our audience a little bit more. These folks are buying this flood insurance. They have to buy the flood insurance. And then when a flood actually hits them, they're not getting enough to cover their expenses.
I think that's part of the tragedy here, is that there's a peace of mind in believing that if things go wrong, when you're buying insurance, that it will be fixed because you're required to buy it. It's not optional in these cases. And so these people didn't panic. As difficult as it is to lose their possessions, to see their home ruined, they believe they can rebuild, and then what they're finding is that they're not being given the funds they were promised to then rebuild those houses.
So how do you distinguish that between the National Flood Insurance Program that is run by FEMA?
So the National Flood Insurance Program handles all flood insurance policies in the United States. It was established 50 years ago, 1968. It runs all of them. In many cases, though, what it does is it contracts out to these write-your-owns, or YWOs, the private insurance companies that then handle the flood claims. And that's where things can get a little screwy at times as they negotiate who's paying what and whether the money is going to the private insurance companies or the lawyers or the homeowners. I think most would agree that in an ideal situation, a lot of the money that is in the National Flood Insurance Program, this is $3 billion a year, should go to the people that actually have to rebuild their homes.
Right.
That is not always happening.
And instead, we saw in your piece $29 million at this firm, Nielsen, Mr. Gerald Nielsen. Yeah. And he wouldn't talk to us.
That was after Superstorm Sandy, and so he ran into some trouble and was heavily criticized after Superstorm Sandy. He's now still, there's some feel that he shouldn't be handling these cases at all anymore. He still is, and so he basically says that a lot of this information is privileged, which is why he said he can't talk about it with us.
And finally, Ricky and Melissa, what are they going to do next?
Well, they're still, so they reimbursed, they paid out of their own pocket to fix what they could, and they're still trying to get some of this money back. There are others that we've spoken to, including a couple that we spoke to last night, Richard and Linda Brown, who haven't fixed all this, and they're living in a home with no insulation, no drywall, no flooring, in a home that is down to the studs, trying to raise 4 kids 2 years later, and they can't get their home fixed. In a cold, wet home, it is not easy to see. And listening to their stories really makes you think about maybe things can be done a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and it's just, I'm so happy that you were able to do this investigation, because when I saw Ricky and Melissa saying, you know, no one has been paying attention to this, no one has been paying attention to us, except for journalists who sometimes, you know, say, hey, what's going on here? What are you guys up to, and what's happened to your homes? And
credit to our investigative team, Megan Toohey, Len Tepper, Kristen Steve, all of them did more work than I did on this story, hunting all this down, tracking it down, putting everything together. I was able to visit with some of these folks who were affected by this, travel down to Louisiana and see this up close. But they have done a ton of the legwork on this. And this is the stuff they're doing every day, which is one of the things that makes CBS News special.
Shining a light. Yeah. Jeff Glor, thank you very much, Jeff. Appreciate it.